Hey guys, so I'm Terry. I've been in New York about like 9 months or so. I actually came initially to the city looking for a product job, but I ended up working in crypto. So I can share some stories from that too. So you've probably seen what SelfKey is. We're a blockchain startup. We're only 6 months old. Most of our team is based in Asia. I'm the only guy in the US. They're all based in Europe, Asia. And our company is we're working in the identity space. So one thing to understand, kind of to get your head around this, is that when you use Instagram, you log in with your Facebook account or email. And they keep your login details on the server. But for crypto, there's no server that holds it because the network is decentralized. So there's no database that holds your identity information, so you have to own it yourself. So I think what we see is this is the first step to actually opening this whole ecosystem, is that getting the identity play figured out as a whole. So day to day, I do prototyping, I use Balsamic, I do UX research, a lot of user testing, and even product marketing, because a lot of this crypto stuff, marketing it to consumers and users is very difficult right now. Most people don't know even say what an ERC20 token is, Ethereum. Using those wallets is very complicated, and how do you structure that as a product to get that to the mass market is something that I think the industry still has to figure out. And so my background kind of wandered into product by accident, mostly come from the physical product space in finance, so if anyone has any questions there on how to make the switch, I can answer that later. Okay, so agenda today, I want to go over crypto on a very high level without getting technical, because when I saw the hands, not that many people own crypto, so I don't want to confuse you with all the details. Kind of some challenges of building crypto products, my typical workday, and then some tips on getting your foot in the door. First thing I want to start off is beliefs about money. So everyone here pretty much grew up with, say, using a US dollar, euro, Australian dollar, fiat currency that we grew up with. And one thing to understand crypto is that money evolves over time, and it's not real in the sense that how we believe like this remote is real. So if you look at 10,000 years ago, if I had a cow and you had grain, I would make a trade, right? We would barter, and then over time, we switched to shells, and then we switched to kind of crude coins, and we have precious metals, and then now we have kind of like making it rain with dollar bills. And then now I think the next evolution of money will be digital. And I was kind of explaining this as a whole idea of just kind of like plug yourself out of the matrix when it comes to money. So one thing to also know about money is that it's a function of power. If you look at, it's March now, taxes are due in April. You have to pay the IRS tax, otherwise you get in trouble, you can go to jail. The Federal Reserve sets interest rates that impacts the economy, and you can have trade tariffs on certain industries to promote certain businesses or companies. And even a country like the US that's very powerful can use sanctions against a country like Russia, North Korea, or even take your money and build national defense like fighter planes, missiles, all this stuff. And the interesting thing is that everyone probably here has a passport. 10,000 years ago, who told you you couldn't just walk across to a different country? And this little book has to tell you what you can and cannot do. So this concept of kind of money and geopolitics really has kind of like a long-term impact from crypto, and I'll show you why in a second. So if you look at crypto as a whole, the example I like to give my friends is, let's look at the internet before the internet. So we have the fax machine, CD-ROM, maybe you remember burning a DVD, books, old TVs, newspapers, and film. And so each channel of information was siloed on its own until the internet, where you can kind of do it all online, right? iMessage, Dropbox, Kindle, Netflix, The Skin, if any women read this, I subscribe to it too. Also Instagram for photos. So I think the way I see crypto is kind of the same thing. So you have finance, you have different silos of finance where you have Western Union for sending money, you have credit cards, foreign exchange, kind of like estate planning, stock market, and loans. And you're starting to see elements of this shift into crypto. So these companies, like one, obviously everyone knows Bitcoin. You can send someone Bitcoin anywhere in the world. If you think about it, sending someone $100 in small amounts between different countries is actually not that easy. But for crypto, you can kind of just mail it to someone as long as you have their address. And so the second one here is called the Monaco card. I don't know if you guys heard of that. But basically, they're trying to build a debit card that's backed by crypto. So every time you swipe it, it just takes out your account balance. And so Shapeshift is kind of like the foreign exchange, where you can trade blockchain assets between Bitcoin, Ethereum, or different tokens. And then self-backed loans. If you're an accredited investor, you can basically say, hey, I have 5,000 Bitcoin, I'm going to hold it as collateral, and then you can lend it and collect money back. So kind of interesting how you have kind of like collateral assets like that. And then AirSwap is a decentralized exchange. Anyone here of Coinbase? Or, so everyone knows Coinbase, right? So Coinbase is a centralized exchange. What that means is when you sign up for an account, they hold your wallet keys, so they can actually control where your money is. And so what happens is that over time, as these exchanges get bigger, it becomes a honeypot to get hacked, right? Because then that's how people lose hundreds of millions of dollars. The exchange loses it, and then this is why kind of decentralized exchanges are really picking up, I think, this year, especially as one, the SEC starts to crack down on all these exchanges. They just had a big announcement yesterday, but you're starting to see like kind of these different channels within finance show up. And then Ethereum, you can do contract programming, stuff like that I'll talk about a bit later too. So the kind of thesis here is that the internet, you can move information peer-to-peer on it, but crypto is like the next layer where you can move value between people, and that's kind of how I explain it to people. And remember that money evolved, and I think this is kind of like the next evolution of money. Okay, and so when you think about it, you're like, whoa, like this is what really blew my mind, because I grew up using a dial-up modem, and then like a month ago you see SpaceX launch 2 rockets. Like, who knew that within 20 years you could do that? Like, your mom picks up the phone. Like, I saw my mom in January, and she has cut off her cable internet. She has no phone line, and she has no dial-up order. So she only uses her 4G LTE. We went from like 1999, where she's picking up my modem and like disconnecting me, to like being a cord connector. So what's interesting is that I think whatever happens here for crypto, like, we don't know yet, but I think this chart is interesting where it shows you the evolution of technology. So in like the 60s and 70s, we had the microprocessors that had to develop, so the hardware of everything we use today. And then from the late 70s to mid 90s, you have Microsoft, Linux, kind of the operating systems on top of that. And then you have Google, Facebook for the networks from 2000 to around mid 2010. And then now this is kind of where we are, somewhere along here, but who knows how this is going to develop too. So I guess crypto assets, if you don't know how they work, kind of go over real quick just to give you an overview. So right now in this system, if I send you $100, let's say I use Bank of America, they will take it out of my account and then tell Chase that, hey, give Bob $100, and they have something called a ledger that they keep on the bank, and then each bank has its own ledger that keeps this data, and then gets stored in a database somewhere, and that's why you have financial documents, auditing, all this stuff that kind of has what we have in the legacy centralized system. But crypto is decentralized, right? So there's no servers here to store your data. It's on the network because it's on the blockchain. I'll explain what that is in a second. But what you have with crypto is you have basically 3 elements. One, everything is secured by cryptography, which honestly I don't know how it works, but it's like a public key, private key system that a lot of developers may know how it works. And you have nodes around the world, so everything is distributed. And you can also like send commerce and value between anyone in the world, which is kind of crazy that someone in Venezuela, I can send Dogecoin just to tip him because he posted on Reddit. Like, it's pretty crazy, right? And so if you look at like this chart, I think Bitcoin is the first one. To give you some context, Ethereum would probably be the second guy. And we have some new projects in the space, like Cardano, Stellar. There's one I heard called ArcBlock. Kind of how they're trying to do, so each crypto here has its own blockchain. I think the 3.0 guys are trying to have adapters where you can just switch between chains, but this is still, we're kind of like here. No one even knows what this is going to be like yet, but we're kind of like somewhere in between right here, I think, as an industry. So I think if we can figure this out, there's a couple cool things we can do. So if you look at identity management, which is the space we're in, remember the Equifax hack? I think, 160 people got hacked, so probably a third of the people in this room have their data leaked. So when you have a centralized database, it becomes very attractive targets for hackers, even the Uber hack, excuse me. And if you look at Spotify, they have your music ID, Facebook has your social ID, Instagram has your photos, so you don't really own your ID in some ways. So if we're going to have decentralized applications, we really need the user to kind of have some sort of control over this too. So kind of some 2 use cases that are pretty cool. Trading and settlements. Any finance people in here? Anyone know how like settlement works for like credits or like stocks or like derivatives? It's a huge back office operation that takes some days 2 days to settle, 2 days to settle. So a lot of these things hypothetically could be distributed on the blockchain and you just sell it instantly. Supply chain management. One thing that's kind of interesting is that if you buy organic food, how do you know that it's certified organic? What does it actually mean? So there are certain things you can do in the supply chain. So if you're a farmer, you can sign certain shipments for certain things. If you're a producer, you can sign it. And as a consumer, you can see that everyone has signed it. So then you can have kind of like authentication thing on what this actually means too. But there's plenty of the use cases, but I think there's a couple of hurdles we have to cross first in this industry. So one, product market fit. I think if you've been in the space, you know this word. I think there's two phrases to this. One is actually figuring out the whole ecosystem. I think we're kind of here right now. We don't really know what is the leading system yet in terms of what to build on and what's actually going to be the end one that we all use, and also the end users. When can we get everyone in, say, Times Square to start using a decentralized app? I don't know the answer, but I think we need to figure out this one first, and then we can move on to here. So hopefully Spider-Man is not shrugging at us, but Kanye can. So anyway. Poor user experience. So if you pay for something with Visa right now, the merchant gets charged 2%, 2.9%, 5% for Amex, and then you don't see it as a consumer when you're transacting. But on crypto, especially Ethereum, there's something called gas price. Anyone hear of gas price before? Okay, so the reason is when you pay for something on crypto, there's no subsidy for the server cost. You're paying the network to do this, right? So if you look at Instagram, when you look at a photo, you pay your telecom provider $50 a month for the bandwidth, and then Instagram pays for the server, but they have ads that kind of pay for that. And on crypto, there's no server, so you have to pay the network to do it. And so basically, every time you do something, you have to pay gas, at least on Ethereum. So imagine if you're on Instagram, every time you load a photo, you have to pay like 2 cents, and then you want to comment something, you have to pay 2 cents. This is like the reality right now, which is really stupid, but I call this poor user experience, but it's also something that the network will have to solve that we don't have an answer yet as it develops. And so kind of to show you how this works right now, if I send you a transaction, normally a bank keeps it on their ledger, but it gets sent to the network here, where basically it's confirmed, it gets validated, and then these transactions get packed into a block, and then the block gets chained together, and that's why it's called a blockchain, because there are blocks of data that are chained together that forms a ledger. So that's like the 30-second explanation, if anyone tries to confuse you in the future. So this is pretty much like the one chart you need to know. And then regulation. So this is a big can of worms because every country does it differently, especially like the US, Japan, China, Hong Kong, even Korea. I think the interesting thing about crypto is that I think half of the world's trading volume comes from Asia right now. I feel like Korea, Japan. Japan was especially one of the early ones with Mt. Gox to have that exchange get hacked. So regulation-wise, it's really interesting. Even Venezuela started their own crypto petro, their coin, but who knows who's going to buy it, right? So I think a lot of this stuff will start to take place this year in terms of what people deem is legal or not by the SEC or other governments. So this is something to look out for if you want to get into this space. Okay, scalability. Right now, Visa can take a lot of transactions per second, somewhere between the north of 2,000 to say 6,000 or whatever. But I think Ethereum and some other network can only get up to 100 per second. So if you're looking for like true scalability, we're actually not there yet. And this is the founder of Ethereum. His name is Vitalik. I think he's only like 23, but even he says, you know, this could all go to zero, and it's not scalable yet. So be careful. Okay, and so what does this mean? Like as a product manager, is that one, you have the tech that is developed, but it's not really mature yet. Business use case is kind of a question mark. UX is pretty bad. So like when you're sitting here, you know, kind of like every day, like my job, I feel like it's like you're surfing, but the waves are moving, and you're trying to build the board as you're surfing. Because really, if you look at like SaaS companies or other things, you know, pretty vanilla client server model that you have. But when it comes to like blockchain tech, it's like who's even shipping anything? Like I feel like we're shipping stuff, but if you look at the whole market, like what products are out there, there's really not more than like maybe 20 working products out there. So kind of an interesting space to be in right now. So my typical workday, our team is based mostly in Asia, so I work evenings here usually from 7 p.m. to 3 a.m., sometimes 4. The interesting thing about developing on blockchain is that we're on Ethereum, so we have a Solidity developer, and usually when you have a client-server app, it's pretty much front-end, back-end, but now you have like a third blockchain thing to do. So if I have a wallet, if I send you money, what do we tell the blockchain to do, and how does the front-end develop that, and how does your data on the back-end store that? And we don't have a backend, we don't have a server, so it's stored on your local device. But how do all those things interact with? And it's interesting because sometimes the blockchain gets really clogged. So when your transaction is hanging for 2 hours, well, what do you actually tell the person using the app? And how do they not think your app is crashing? Because you can't control the network, right? So how do you actually work around this? This is other growing pains that I have to go through. So core tools, Balsamic for wireframing. I think especially if you're in a remote team, this is really good to like just get ideas out. If you're going to cut up something, and then you can use a clickable prototype, it's going to get ideas out there. Confluence, Jira for actually developing tasks. Envision, Zeppelin for the designer, and then AHA and Asana for the road mapping. And so most crypto companies will pay you in crypto. So for example, I invoiced at Ethereum last week at like 850. I think today is at 700. So the volatility is kind of something you just kind of have to bite. So if it drops, I think it's like 15%. I pretty much lost 20% last month, but I'm going to sell it, right? So, but also if it goes up, then you kind of make more money. So, but I've talked to like some friends that work in the space for like 2 years. After a while, you just kind of get used to it. You just don't look at it. Because I guess in the long run, if you're in this for the long run, you won't care about the volatility. Okay, so here's a kind of balsamic wireframe I made. So basically, in our product right now, we have Ethereum wallet, and a lot of, I don't know if you've heard of ICOs recently, a lot of them are doing it on the Ethereum platform. So we have a wallet where you can manage all your different tokens, and we pull the latest prices, and you can kind of see it as a portfolio view, right? So this is kind of the mock-up I made, and then when I sent it to my developer and my designer, here's what it actually looks like in the app. I think some of the cropping is wrong, but basically, it's things like these, kind of pretty, I guess, standard product management workflows, but you're doing it on the blockchain. They're just a third element of actually, what is this coin's address? How do you get this coin load here? And how do you get all these numbers here to work together? It's kind of like the next level. That kind of makes this more interesting to work with. Okay, let's go into job hunting. This one, there is no crypto degree right now. So if anyone tries to sell you on a crypto MBA, I think they are a snake oil salesman. And one thing is that if you are going to say spend 100K to go to a crypto school, or if it exists, you should just buy crypto and trade it. You'll probably learn more, is my guess. And so I think also a lot of this stuff is new. So when you're learning it in a school, I think NYU has classes now, I think Fordham has classes. But what I'm afraid of is that if you learn something today, in 6 months, it'll be this space moves so fast. And unless you're like staying on top of this, if you go to school, this stuff you learn might get outdated really quick. Okay, so a lot of people, when they talk to me, like, hey, I'm interested in crypto, I know where it gets so what? And this is not to be like derogatory, but it's more saying that, all right, you're interested in it, and then show me what you can do. Because a lot of these crypto teams, they have 2 people, 5 people, maybe the bigger ones have 10 plus. So when you have a smaller team, you need someone that can execute, work on a lot of things, be adaptable, and I think resourceful to start off things. So kind of if you want someone to kind of give you a job or kind of create it for you, you almost have to like build it out yourself, saying, hey, I can help you with these three things. Here's my rate, here's how I can help you do this, solve this problem. Here's my proposal, and let's start maybe like a trial period and kind of hack. Like you almost have to hack your way in some ways, in a lot of ways. So because there's no traditional process to hiring. One thing you should do is go to events. There's a lot of events in New York City, especially I think Ethereum, Enterprise Alliance, Crypto NYC. There's a lot of good groups. I'll leave my email here if you're interested. I'll give you a list afterwards. But events are probably the best ways you want to get into this space because the community is still very small. So you can meet founders, people working on projects, people that work in finance that are in this space, and kind of get a referral too. Okay, join communities. A lot of people use an app called Telegram. Anyone hear of Telegram before? Right. So pretty much every group that's working in the crypto space, whether they've done an ICO, token sale, or they're a community, they will be on Telegram. So you want to join these communities, start eavesdropping in, maybe add value here and there, share an article you thought that was cool, and start connecting with people there. And that's Burning Man. I thought this was kind of cool. So, and like I said, there's no traditional path to recruiting. Very few companies have recruiters right now. So there's no like Glassdoor you apply to, talk to an HR guy, do an exercise, and then talk to the chief product guy. If they even have a chief product guy, usually it's the founder. So I think if you want to get into this space, you got to start going to meetups, talking to people, and then when you meet founders, just show them what you can do, and then kind of start from there too. So other roles I think crypto needs right now. I know we're all here product focused, but I think if you have friends that want to get into this space, that's really important. Product marketing. If you talk about the gas price, like I just explained to you, it's very hard for someone to understand this. So I think as products get developed, how do you position the marketing message for this? It's going to be a big challenge. Investor relations. If companies have done an ICO or token sale, it's pretty much just a locker room in these Telegram groups. So imagine a room full of finance traders, but it's international, and everyone's posting stupid Reddit memes and like asking when they're going to get their Lamborghini and like when is this going to move? When I'm going to 30x my money. It's like, how do you manage that community instead of having it degrade into like a locker room, which a lot of channels already have if you've been in Telegram. And so third thing, I think operations. Since crypto is decentralized, a lot of teams are organized that way. So I'm the only guy in New York. Most of our team is in Thailand, Vietnam, Georgia, Hong Kong, and Tokyo. But how do you build an organization around that operation-wise? I think that's something that we all need to. And then kind of what excites me about crypto, because I used to work in e-commerce, I used to be in finance. What excites me about crypto is that it pretty much involves all of these topics, no matter how you look at it. Technology, because we're building on technology, but a lot of history stuff and law and politics and psychology kind of intersect here. So this is why, I think for me, it's the most exciting thing I've ever worked on. But a lot of this stuff is still new, so we're still developing as we're going. And I think if you're interested in kind of really cowboy stuff, building something in a new market, you'll probably like this. Okay, so that's it. Q&A. Any questions? My email's there if you have any. If I don't get to answer it, or if you want a list of meetups in New York that you go to, I can send you that too. So.
Do you have a view on where the best location is to kind of set up, city-wise, country-wise? I know most of it's in Asia, but I know, I came from finance, and then New York kind of stifled some early Bitcoin development. I don't know.
Yeah. So the question is there a city that you should plant yourself in to get in the crypto space? Yeah. It's tricky because New York has that bit license that they have here, so a lot of companies can't operate here. So even technically, me, I'm consulting for them, so there's things to kind of figure out. Right? So, but I think, even then, I still think New York's a good place. I think SF's a good place too, just because a lot of the finance space I think will catch up in the next year or two. Maybe it was a little bit lagging 2 or 3 years ago, but I feel like when I go to events now, you can see the interest is coming. But it's just a matter of, say, regulations. When the SEC clarifies what exchange can do, what they can do, ICOs get a proper way to do it, and then you'll probably see a lot of institutional money, and then the whole industry will get popular. Yeah, that's kind of But it's also I think Asia is pretty big. If you were to pick Asia, I think Japan's probably a good place, or Hong Kong. Those are probably the 2 biggest ones, especially Japan. I think because they've had Mt. Gox since 2014. The regulators have a lot of experience with crypto. I think they're one of the most probably crypto-friendly regulators from what we've seen. But also for SelfKey, a lot of our target market is in Southeast Asia because a lot of banks there and kind of exchanges never had the last 20 years of development that they had here in the US or the West, so they're trying to leapfrog what they have right now, in Thailand, to go straight to blockchain and try to just skip this. Because a lot of Southeast Asian populations, they probably don't have a computer, but they have an Android phone. So how do you leapfrog that technology with this kind of infrastructure is what we're trying to figure out how to do that.
SelfKey just focused on cryptocurrency, or are you guys doing identity management for enterprise and just any kind of identity requirements?
Yes. So the question is, what does SelfKey, do we do identity or do we do wallets? Yeah, so the slide I showed you earlier is our identity wallets here. So basically from this product, what we're kind of doing right now is integrating with exchanges, because a lot of exchanges need to do KYC. So in your local wallet, you could build your passport selfie. Every exchange kind of makes you do this. So you can store it locally and then just one click upload it to an exchange, to ICO in the future. We're not focusing on that yet, but the idea is that you can own your ID in the wallet, you can manage your tokens here, and then you can also apply to exchanges and to do KYC stuff through the wallet.
So you're storing your key, so my private keys would be on your network, or?
No, it would be locally on your machine. So
Okay.
if you use a Trezor or Nano, we're still doing that integration, but you can just manage all this on your desktop instead of going to say my Ether wallet, that's a web interface, and every time you gotta log in and enter your key, it's kind of just
I got you.
something like that too. Yeah, and then the corporate wallet, we're gonna work on something like that, but that's kind of later in the year. Because I think that's a big space too, where even multi-signature contracts, where if you need to buy $10 at Staples, you need an accountant to sign off, and then your boss needs to sign off. Okay, we just have them all say okay in the contract. We kind of just do something like that. So, but that's down the line in the future.
Just a little bit more about SelfKey to see how a company's developing. Is it conceptual, or do you have customers that you're developing the concept in tangent with them, or what's the flow of development and the marketplace?
Sure. So the question was, what's the history of SelfKey? So SelfKey is owned by a parent company that we have called KYC Chain. And KYC Chain essentially powers a lot of KYC for ICOs. It's basically a web app. And what we've done, we've separated the B2B side from the B2C side. So SelfKey, imagine, is the B2C side for owning your identity. But KYC Chain is where if you're doing an ICO and you need to do KYC, you can basically use the platform to approve or decline people for this ICO. And so a lot of people are using this because no one wants to get in trouble with SEC. So for example, through KYC Chain, if I want to start a Terry coin and want to exclude US citizens, everyone that applies through the dashboard, I can just have an admin reject, approve, and I can have like my proper KYC instead of having everyone send it to an email where you have all these different files flying around. I don't want your passport, I have your passport. Like it just becomes a huge mess. So KYC changes the platform where we can do that, but it powers a lot of what happens in SelfKey. And so SelfKey, our first wallet will be launched by the end of Q1, and we're partnering with exchanges first because I think from a business perspective, exchanges need to get their KYC done right. So partnering with them long term versus the ICO that really only needs KYC for until they get their tokens. It's kind of a different business proposition. So yeah, so our first product will be launched end of the month, end of Q1. So you'll get on the website. Too, so. I think the question back there, yeah.
Can you talk about the reason, the past, I guess, 12 to 18 months where we've seen ICOs raise more money than traditional, like VC, seed round funds?
Yeah. So the question is, can you talk about why ICOs are raising so much money? So SelfKey for our token sale, we did 21 million. We had a pre-sale and a public sale. Like it was kind of split up. But I think a lot of this market is just, especially last December, is driven by FOMO, fear of missing out. And I think when you have, I guess one thing is that being an investor is very easy. You can just go on Coinbase, put your credit card in, buy Bitcoin, and you're an investor, right? But like to actually build something on this platform, to actually have an Ethereum developer, the front end, back end, the application, get this audited, it's actually a much harder proposition. And I think a lot of the money chasing that you see when these ICOs launch, they 20x, 30x, I think a lot of people just try to get on that train. And especially like white papers, for me, unless you have some kind of product out there, it's really just like an idea in a PDF, to kind of be really honest. And so I think a lot of people, they see this and they think, wow, I can just put 1K in here and it'll 5x and I'll do this 5 times. And then I think you're starting to see the market cool off a little bit though. Ever since last December, I would say, when I think after Bitcoin was at 20K and then it dropped down. And even like this month, you can see things are kind of like slowing down a little bit. But usually the first half of the year kind of slows down anyways. But I think one thing with ICOs in the future is that, when these regulators come chasing everyone, I think which will happen this year, you're already starting to see it. It's going to look very different. But I also think that there probably is a proper way to do ICOs. Just you need to figure out what jurisdiction you're doing in. Is the government going to come stop you with a chain and take you to jail or not? So I think on a general basis, some ICOs have been playing it safe, where they exclude certain countries, like no United States citizens, no People's Republic of China, because even if you kind of let someone in, then you're subject to the regulation, and a lot of people would just rather be like, hey, just sorry, buy it on the market afterwards, but we don't want to go to jail for this. So, yeah.
Going back to that first question about location,
Yeah.
if the UK is an option for people, like that country is a really good use case because they're so friendly to the concept of blockchain. A lot of the ministries in the UK are actually investigating ways to implement or utilize it for the government.
Yeah.
So even if somebody isn't able to go work in the UK, they don't want to relocate,
Yeah.
I pay attention to what's going on in the UK because those ministries are doing things that a lot of other governments are not yet.
Yeah.
The second thing I was going to say is cryptocurrency tends to get so much of the press. It's
Right.
got that attention getting. There's such an emotional component to money. We don't have an emotional attachment to a ledger. Like that concept
Right.
doesn't resonate the same way,
Yeah.
which is not only why there's so many clicks driving the stories for crypto, but I think why all people who are threatened by blockchain quite
Right.
justifiably want to hit that button as much as possible to freak out the mainstream that does not understand it.
Yeah, I think one example is I was in China last year and I had to get my apartment deposit back, and you can only get $500 per day at a bank. So imagine you're getting $3,000 back. You have to fill out like 6 forms and like do all this stuff. And they have very strong capital controls there, so a lot of foreign credit cards probably don't work there. If you take your bank card from China, you go overseas, I think after 15K they shut it down. Because they're trying to keep all the money in the system. But you can see how crypto can really threaten them, because who's to stop someone from just sending it to someone overseas on the phone? And I think a lot of governments, if you look at how the economies are structured, like the US dollar, euro, a lot of these geopolitical things that are coming into play here, if you could just kind of let your citizens mail money anywhere and like do all this stuff. So I think a lot of that stuff, I mean, depending on what you're looking at, if you're super libertarian, it's probably cool, or you're like an anarchist, but if you're like super conservative, it looks really scary. So I think a lot of that stuff, we'll see how it plays on the news. But also, what's interesting is that if you look at the news, every time I look at news, I'm like, all right, who's to benefit in this article when I'm reading it? And I think that's a very important skill set to learn, instead of just taking everyone's, news as gospel. Because what you see on CNBC versus Fox News or Drudge Report or any other, The Hill, they all have their own slant. So I think it's important to you kind of get your own views if you're doing that. You just got to do your research. And I think a lot of this crypto stuff, if you spend the time learning the basics of the technology, I think that's a good starting step, just to know how blockchain works and how the blockchain is going to evolve among different platforms. I think once you know that, you can then look at objectively at different use cases and kind of make your own opinion. And you go to meetups, you'll meet people that have different views, and that's kind of how you kind of learn. And you really go down the rabbit hole too. So.
Well, what I was driving towards
Yeah.
is that crypto's getting the press. I think blockchain is the real
Right,
risk
exactly.
and the real threat, which is the same thing,
Yeah.
because it's starting to be disruptive or undermine people who benefit the most, whether it's in legit fashions and control the ecosystem, or it's people cheating. Like the supply chain example for one, anyone who's able to maybe enforce is able to game the system and cheat, and bank money like mad in a blockchain system. That'll be nearly impossible.
Yeah.
So those people don't want to see blockchain implemented. Blockchain is the real deal. Crypto is a necessary need.
They're like the two hands that go together.
Right.
Exactly.
So when you talk about SelfKey, I think this is fantastic, because actually controlling ID, like your proof of self, is really important.
It's something you're going to need no matter what you do on the network.
Yes, and so what I was going to ask you is, as a product manager for SelfKey, what do you think is necessary as like proof of concept, or how do you drive that broader adoption? Because until it's mainstream, we're not going to get to a place where we can really evolve blockchain where it can go.
No.
And I mean, people talk about not understanding blockchain or crypto, but people don't understand fiat currency. If you ask the average American to explain how the treasury works or how money works, we can't. They don't actually educate us on money and finance, and they frankly don't want to. The educated populace is much easier to gain.
Yeah, so I think roadmap-wise, we're starting with the kind of hardcore crypto guy that buys ICOs and needs a token wallet and wants to go on exchanges. So our focus is essentially exchanges first, because they need KYC, and we're getting the most business development requests from them. And then from there, to have the corporate wallet, maybe go after some banks that are open to this newer idea, and hopefully from there we can kind of do it. But even then, that's like, it's on the roadmap, but who knows how this industry is going to develop in like 6 months or a year or two. But I think it's starting small and then building up from there too. So, but I think also, like you're saying, most people don't understand this. So if you go strictly B2C, your marketing costs, your acquisition costs, they're not going to make sense. So I think we're starting with these exchanges that really need this part out, and then as this gets more mainstream, we can kind of ride that wave. It's kind of what we went for. So yeah, in the back, yeah.
Speaking of mainstream, what do you think is going to be the incentive for consumers to start adopting crypto on a larger scale? For instance, like right now we're incentivized to use our credit cards because we get rewards miles and points back and 2-for-1 deals.
Right.
Is there going to be something embedded in crypto that encourages us to make the leap?
I think right now we don't have an answer yet, but I think what needs to happen first, it needs to become invisible. So when I send someone money now, I need to specify to the network how much transaction price I'm willing to pay, depending on how fast I want to go through, right? With Visa, you just pay 2% and it works. You pay Amex 5% and it works. Even like if you think about the internet before, if I wanted to send you a video file 20 years ago, I need to log into your FTP server, drag this file over, wait 8 hours, maybe it would work. But you look like now Netflix, you just press play and it works. And I think crypto has to get to that point. Then we can kind of create that incentive, at least to be on parity with kind of cards right now. I think one workaround that I think some cards are trying to solve is like the BitPay card or the Monaco card, where you can use existing like Visa cards and then just back it up by crypto and then pay with that. But I think, personally, I don't think Visa and MasterCard, and we're going to let that happen that easily, just because the way they've been entwined with the banks, they're not going to let this go. They're not going to let this just crypto come in here too. I think there'll be a turf war for that. So that's just my personal opinion too. So, yeah.
Again, SelfKey, just to better understand the whole identity thing. And there are a few others in your space, like Uport.
Yeah, Uport, I think Civic is a close one.
Yeah.
There are a couple other identity plays. There may be some newer ones. But essentially what we're all trying to solve is how do you own your ID and then you can use these decentralized applications.
So is the idea that I might have an identity on each of those three, or that you're looking long-term to be the dominant player and You know, how do you see?
Yeah, I think it might end up being regional. To have one truly global one like Facebook, I mean, I don't know if anyone can actually pull that off, but I think regionally you'll have different. It's like how like Uber is really big here, but actually Grab Taxi is really big in Southeast Asia. And Uber didn't win China, so they sold to Didi. I think that might be what happens, but yeah, who knows? And I think the market's still so new that in 5 years, maybe a newer player, will come along too. Which is why it's so exciting, because this ID space, even the concept of owning your ID is very unique too, because every time you have your Gmail, you have your Spotify, your Facebook, all these different things floating around, you don't really truly own them. And so it's kind of an interesting concept that is needed to be solved before you can have all these decentralized applications actually work, because otherwise how are you going to use them too? So yeah.
Hi, so you said your company SelfKey, you guys ran an ICO.
Yeah.
And what's the incentive for buying or investing?
Sure.
in
So
those
our
tokens?
so our key token powers the marketplace. It's not showed here, but in our marketplace we'll have products and services where you can open bank accounts, get a second passport, get documents notarized. And so we're requiring people to stake because one, it needs to promote kind of like proof of individuality. And so my big example is if you look at Craigslist, you have all these weird listings. You don't know who's selling what. There's no intent of like someone to promote a good behavior. So basically, we've set up a structure where different products and services will have different staking levels. And so if you want to get a new bank account, you need to stake like X amount for 30 days, just so that you don't mess around with the other guy. Because if it's a marketplace that needs to work, you need two parties to work. So you're going to get a document notarized, they need to stake, and you need to stake, so that both of you guys can actually transact it too. So that's kind of like to promote like a good marketplace is essentially why we have staking built in. Okay. Yeah.
What are the skill sets you advise kind of if you want to start a career in crypto?
Mhm.
What skill sets would you recommend?
Sure. I think
Focus on
for product, right?
Product.
I think product for me. So my background was a little bit in finance, a little bit in entrepreneurship, a little bit in online marketing. I think being able to be adaptable is probably the biggest one, just because this industry changes a lot. So when I mean adaptable, are you comfortable making decisions work-wise that you don't have all the information in? I think Jeff Bezos had a quote, it's better to move when you have 70% of the information than waiting for 90. And also because this industry moves so fast that even Ethereum, there's certain things we wanted to do that we just can't do anything, but we have to develop around that. And I think depending on if you're coming from like a more conservative kind of like background where you kind of just want to have your 9 to 5, you don't want like crazy variables working at 2 a.m. sometimes because something breaks. Like, I think it depends what you're looking for. If you want to do that, I think adaptability is probably number one, and also two, just a general interest in this space. I think once you start kind of digging into the different rabbit holes, like what crypto can do, what identity can do, what even voting can do, because if everyone has their own identity, you can actually vote, and you can't rig the system because everyone owns their vote. And it's all this stuff that has crazy implications that we probably won't see yet, but I think once you kind of go down that rabbit hole, you can really start to see the interesting kind of developments. And if you grew up with the internet, and you see what the internet did to information, you can see this, and this was really exciting about this space too. So, yeah. Okay, any more questions? Yeah.
Can you just spend a little bit more time telling us how you first got into cryptocurrencies, what your first crypto transaction was?
Yeah, so I first bought Bitcoin in 2014 when it was at 900, and then it crashed to 300, and I was like, all right, forget this, I'm not coming back. And then the founder of SelfKey, Edmund, turns out he's been working on KYC chain, like the KYC platform, for the last 3 years. And back when I had some of my own products business, he was my registered agent for my LLC. So he's been doing the KYC stuff for a long time. And basically, he's taken all that stuff he's been doing as like opening bank accounts, registering LLCs, doing all this incorporation stuff. And he's trying to bring that to the blockchain. And then I've known him for 5 years. And then just he kind of called me and said, hey, I need some product help. And I was like, all right, cool. That was it. So, yep.
And how is it getting paid in crypto? Do you convert to fiat, or do you hold, or do you look at the market to determine, I guess, what the base amount is? Is that a preference for yourself?
Yeah, so when I first told my mom this, she's like, oh my God, you're getting paid in crypto. This is worth nothing. You should sell it all every day. And I was like, Mom, it's not dropping. It's like, some days it's at 700, some days at 800, some days at 900. Personally, for me, because I think day to day we still need fiat. I just can't figure out a way around that unless Monaco Card or BitPay Card can figure that out. I would switch to Heartbeat because I think every day we still use our cards. And I just can't think of a way to actually do this right. So basically when I get my crypto, I send it to an exchange, Gemini. I think you probably heard of it. It's like another one in Coinbase. They have better fees, by the way. Coinbase is actually has very expensive fees, so don't trade on Coinbase. Yeah, I sell on Gemini. Usually, if I invoice, say, let's just say like 5,000, 10,000, I'll sell like 80% of it, and I'll keep 20% in crypto, and I'll just kind of allocate it between, some coins I think are interesting, some coins that are kind of more frontier, essentially too. So I think also there's like as you learn more about these projects, some of them you can buy the coins online, some of them you can't, but I think it depends on your risk profile what you find interesting too. But I think in general for me, what's interests me is like platform coins, so like Stellar, Cardano. Things like that, where you can actually code on top of it and then have different things. Whereas I think there's some different coins, like privacy coins and things like that. I think everyone has their own pick, but I just like platform coins right now because I think that's where the technology is. That's going to come in the next 10 years too. So
Once they solve the scalability.
once they solve scalability, exactly. Yeah. But I think you need that platform system to actually do anything later too. So I mean, who knows who's going to figure it out? Yeah.
Can you talk about what kind of skills from, say, like a finance professional would be transferable to a PM role in crypto?
Sure. I think finance, like investment banking finance or accounting, or
Let's go there.
yeah. I think the one thing about finance that kind of I had to relearn was that if you're like a trader in finance, a lot of the skills get more specialized as you get more senior, and you almost have to unlearn some of that stuff. Where I think communication skills, writing skills, being able to adapt, research, look at situations is probably the number one thing. And because a lot of product stuff, when you're wireframing stuff, you're building stuff, like maybe there's some things you can look at in the market, like products, but a lot of the times you're trying to build this on the fly, you just test it with users and figure it out too. So I think kind of being able to take risks and like kind of be comfortable with ambiguity is probably the first one, and then I think it depends on case to case too. It's so hard to say, but that probably comes more out.